Incompetent Sports Talk is taking you out to the ball game tonight. We're going through our MLB predictions. This is Incompetent Sports Talk. Welcome to another edition of Incompetent Sports Talk, along with Mike Rabin and Jordan Loprena. I'm Alex Salzma, and the Final Four just wrapped up last weekend, and the Duke Blue Devils, Coach K, has his fourth NCAA championship, defeating Butler in a really good game, 61-59. Mike, what are your thoughts on that tournament?
Well, it boiled down to the three S's, Smith, Shire, and Singler, again leading that team to victory. Guard play, forward play, making tough shots. And a big difference I saw is Duke had 12 assists, Butler had 7, distribution of the basketball. It was a close game, defensively both sides, fantastic. You couldn't ask for more in terms of a national championship game because the offense was fairly efficient and the defense was impressive. But Duke, the ACC, yet another national championship.
Yeah, I mean, hats off to Butler for being able, being able to keep it close because there were some, matchups that were clearly in favor of Duke, but Butler plays their defense, they play their position so well and so disciplined that paid off, and that's what kept them in that game, literally until the final seconds. You got to feel for them, but what I do like is that a true college program won the national title, a program that graduates players, a program that doesn't recruit a bunch of one-and-dones, yet still manages to get some of the best players in the nation. And that's impressive what Coach K does there. And hats off, hats off to the Duke Blue Devils for winning arguably one of the more entertaining tournaments that I've ever seen.
Yeah, this is one of the most entertaining tournaments I can ever remember, and I think the funny thing is the fact that they might expand to 96 next year after we had such a great tournament this year, which they're going to have to find other reasons other than money to try to sell us on it, but we all know it's all about the money. But let's talk about this Butler team too. Looking ahead to next year, you got to think Butler is going to be easily a preseason top 10 team. They possibly have 4 starters coming back from this team this year. Jordan, what do you see from teams like Butler next year?
What I see from a team like Butler is that they really should have no problem rolling through the Horizon League again. Fairly weak conference. You don't have that Cleveland State team that you had last year that also made it to the tournament. You have Butler now, and they stand alone in that conference. And that'll be a team that really shouldn't even have much of a problem getting to the tournament itself. And so when you have a team like that, you have to really pay attention to them because, if that's a team that I'm not going to go ahead and jinx them and say it's a lock, but they are about as close of a lock to getting to the NCAA tournament, as it comes based on the strength of their conference. And, when you have a team that can probably get there, that's scary because, then you can just watch them, they've shown they can win these games. They've beaten the 1 seed, they beat Syracuse. They had all these impressive wins, beat Kansas State, beat Michigan State, and then, they go wire to wire with Duke, fall short by 2 with a shot rimming out from half court at the buzzer. So that's a team that'll be dangerous for next year. I'm not going to say they'll make it back to the Final Four, but that's a team that you look at now. They have all that experience. I talked about, they haven't been there before. I talked about that a lot during this tournament. Well, this is a team now that is kind of a Cinderella, but they've been there before. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle next year's tournament with the experience they have.
Butler is an example of the beauty of the tournament. Nobody in their right mind would have picked Butler to go to the Final Four. But what happens? That's why you play the games. They get there, they're well coached, they play great defense, and I can't say they're efficient necessarily on offense all the times because they had a 12-minute stretch against Michigan State where they only hit 1 field goal and an 8-minute stretch against Duke where they only hit 1 field goal, but they get the job done. I think they're a legitimate Sweet 16 contender for next year. It's hard to put them any further than that just with the talent that they have compared to the other powerhouses in college basketball. But good for Brad Stevens, way to put himself on the map and really set his career off on a good mark.
Well, and put his program on the map too, and I hope he's not going to be one of those guys that, leaves for greener pastures. When I say greener, I mean the money. There's a lot of money that'll be probably offered his way. You just look at some of these teams. Oregon seems to be, going after any kind of big name they can with the amount of money they have. We really hope Brad Stevens stays and just, I think he realizes what he has going at Butler, and I think he likes it.
Yeah, and then looking briefly ahead to the Big Ten next year, I mean, who do you see as a favorite going into the season? I think you got to say Purdue. I mean, they're a legitimate top 5 team going next season. And then even Michigan State, I think, is a legitimate top 10 team going into next season, Mike.
Yeah, I think Purdue is clearly going to be the front runner, assuming Robbie Hummel remains healthy. That team as a whole, Jawan Johnson coming back most likely. That team, as we thought in the beginning of the year, at full strength, is the team to reckon with in the Big Ten. And before Robbie Hummel got hurt, they were the only team that went into Value City Arena and beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. So that's the team to look out for. Tom Izzo's team, as we've seen, will always be prepared. They'll always be ready. 6 Final Fours in 12 years. Those 2 teams. Ohio State, they're bringing in some fantastic recruits. They're going to get some players back. They'll be in the mix. I don't know if we're going to see a team like Minnesota step up again the way they did in the Big Ten tournament. It's possible, depending on the recruiting scheme. We'll have to wait and see where some of these recruits go. But I think Ohio State, Purdue, Michigan State, kind of that trio from this past season will be the top 3 dogs next year.
Jordan.
Yeah, I think, you got to go with Purdue. And like Mike said, you got to make sure guys like Robbie Hummel stay healthy. And, of course, Michigan State. I mean, you don't even need to look at the roster. Look at that head coach. He'll get them up there in contention. It doesn't matter who he has out there on the court. Granted, they can't lose their entire starting lineup, but he showed that he can adjust to an injured roster and get them to the Final Four. But you definitely also have to look at Ohio State. The amount of guys there returning, I know they're losing Evan Turner, declared for the NBA draft, but as Mike alluded to, they have a good recruiting class coming in. And I'm not saying that that's going to get them to the promised land, but it'll get them in competition. I think we'll see those 3 again duking it out for the top of the Big Ten.
Yeah, and it's baseball time. We just had opening day on Sunday, and, well, I got my Cubs tie on, so in honor of it. I haven't worn it yet this year, so let's start picking Let's start picking the divisions. We're going to go division by division. I'm still in basketball and football mode, so I'll say conferences. But we'll go division by division and pick who we think the winner is to start off our baseball stuff. So let's go to the NL Central first. And I grew up a Cubs fan, but I got to go with my head on this one. I got to pick St. Louis. And why do I got to pick St. Louis? Because I think Albert Pujols might be the best player in baseball. And I think Chris Carpenter, is going to have a solid year too. And I think St. Louis is a team that can really make a run in the playoffs, maybe even get to the World Series. Mike, what are you thinking? NL Central.
I'm also a diehard Cubs fan, but I think if you look at the division on paper, the Cardinals are the clear favorite with players like Matt Holliday, Albert Pujols, and then a seasoned player in Yadier Molina. They've got a solid core. They've got a center fielder in Colby Rasmus who's got a promising future. They've got so much talent, so much depth. You said Carpenter. They also have Adam Wainwright, who's a second guy in that starting rotation who could do tremendous things this year. So I think the Cardinals are the clear-cut favorite. The Cubs, despite paying a lot of money to get these players and bringing them in, and the addition of Marlon Byrd, I think those are good things, but in the end, the Cubs just, I don't think, have the firepower or the pitching to match up with the Cardinals through a long season.
Jordan.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with both of you. I'm going to go with the St. Louis Cardinals. Like I said, just got to use your head on this one. Or like you said, sorry, Alex. But no, yeah, you got to use your head on this one. You look at the pitching staff, probably the deepest in the division. And then you look at when you have players that produce, Matt Holliday and Albert Pujols are arguably the 2 best hitters in the National League, and they're protecting each other in the lineup. Then you get a guy like Ryan Ludwig who's in there, and I'm still not completely sold, on him, as an overall player, but he puts up the numbers, and that was without Holiday for most of the last 2 years. So you look at that addition. You mentioned Molina. It's a team that has a strong core. Didn't really have any key losses from last year's playoff team that was poised to make a playoff run. Got eliminated by the Dodgers in the first round, but that's a team that got to the playoffs, and they know how good they are, and they're hungry, I think, to make more of a run. And I think that they will also, you might see that division. I think the Cubs might be a little better than I know a lot of their diehard fans are expecting them to be this year, but maybe the Cardinals will be the type of team that could start establishing them, by June as the clear-cut front runner in that division.
Yeah, and Cubs fans, if you want to send Mike or I hate mail, uiist@gmail.com. Just send it right there.